Greetings, Marsh here, and welcome to episode 228 of my modded Factorio playthrough. It looks like we've got all of the modules taken care of here. Before we start dealing with Tier 3 ore sorting, I kind of wanted to talk about the various things that broke with the updates to Angels and Bobs. It was a little while ago, but this is the first episode that I've recorded since those changes came through. And let's come into the mods menu here to kind of talk about the changes. So if you're using my mod list and it was just not loading, well, you can blame that on Science Cost Tweaker because it's always this mod's fault. Unfortunately, it's kind of old and kind of hasn't been updated, but I really like what it offers, so I want to continue using it. Basically, the short of it is that it makes science a lot more costly and convoluted. So it makes doing the next tier of science packs kind of like a much bigger deal than it would be without it. One thing that broke was with Bob's Power, where it changed the way that it named the various solar panels, and that kind of broke Science Cost Tweaker. So with a small change in one of the Science Cost Tweaker files fixes that, and I'll have a link and a comment below that has the file that you can update to fix this if you still having any problems with it. And the other thing that it broke was kind of hidden, where it broke the purple science packs. It would load, but if you tried to make the purple science packs, it would get messed up, and that's because the artisanal reskins mod changed the name of the silicon base item, and that kind of broke the science pack because Science Cost Tweaker took over that. So another small edit to the same file in Science Cost Tweaker fixes it so it will load and work properly. And one other thing that I believe it actually stopped it from loading properly was the offshore pumps mod, and it's not that important, but I do like what it offers. By default, it installs this OSM lib one, which is just this one right here, and you're like, okay, well, that's cool. Well, it looks like it was finally updated, but clearly when I installed the mod, this post-process mod wasn't a requirement, so it would install without it. So then I looked at it here and it says requires OSM lib post-process. I'm like, huh, it's not installed. That's weird. So anyway, I installed that and magically, imagine that, pumps works again. So with those changes, that pretty much fixed all of the problems. Of course, there'll be some more things we'll have to fix, but we'll do that in game. And I also turned off the Mad Clown stuff because at this point I wasn't really using it, and I wanted it to not be a part of all the recipes when we're trying to figure out Tier 3 ore sorting, so I disabled that. So what else got broken in here? Well, part of it was the changes to the science. And of course, right off the bat, you see some research that I probably would have done before this update. Like we have Heat Exchanger 2, which now requires things we could make. So why is this here? Why didn't I research it before, especially when we had those power problems? Well, it wasn't an option. So a lot of this stuff got moved around. Like a big one, it's like the blue algae processing. I've been talking about that every once in a while, that I wanted to do it. The reason why I haven't is because it required titanium, and now it doesn't. And this blue algae recipe can only be made in Algae Farm 4, so now that's available to us, but it wasn't before. But there's also some oddities, so the solar panels got changed. So if you search solar here, you can see we now have Solar Energy 3, because the name of it got shifted by 1. So you might be like, how did I research this when I didn't have the science pack that went into it? It's like, well, I didn't. I did, but the name changed in the game. So now we kind of have an orphan technology that we can't possibly make yet because it requires gold and titanium and green circuits. So that's a lot in the way. It's kind of annoying to have something in your research tree that you've researched and you can't even anywhere close to build, but you also notice like a Powder Metallurgy 2 here, which is not researched, but we almost certainly would have. And I remember that we did go through some unnecessary research to get to this point because we wanted the Powder Mixer 2s to make the module setup a little smaller, I believe. So there's some oddities in here. Here's a little command that, let's say you have something researched and you don't want it researched anymore. Well, you can come in here on the console And I've already copied it in here. But it's this line here, and then the in-game name of the technology you no longer want to have, and then equals false, or equals true if you want to have it, and you don't yet. And then it goes in there and didn't get an error, so it's probably good. So now when we search it, you can see that it is no longer researched, as we would expect. Well, another thing that now got researched because things got moved around was accumulator 2s. They would be great, but we don't have lithium-ion batteries, and we're really not that far away from getting it, but it does require cobalt. So that's kind of why we've put it off, but that's yet another thing that got researched, magically, that we don't want. And we have another command we can use here. Same command as before, but now it's Bob Electric Energy Accumulators 2. And now, it's no longer researched, as you would expect. There are some other oddities in here, specifically titanium. We researched titanium here, I believe because we wanted to get those ore processors, those powderizers, I believe. But otherwise, we weren't going to work on titanium yet. Not that it really matters that much, but I kind of don't like having things researched. Because then I'm like, oh, why don't we research this? We should do titanium processing. I was like, well, we don't have titanium. So it's false hope to stare at that, in my opinion. So we'll come in here, do another one, and it's Angel's Titanium Smelting 1. And now it's no longer researched. And as far as things that are researched that we don't want, those are probably the relevant things. Now it's just kind of a question of any potential orphan technologies that are new. Well, one thing we now have access to is the Filtration Unit 2s. And we didn't before. And it's actually kind of important because now almost every recipe has a minimum machine required. Now, I've been talking about this blue algae for a while because that's really been the only relevant time that that was the case. But now with the update, pretty much all recipes have a minimum machine that they can go into, or at least a lot of them. So you see with this mineral sludge, these recipes here, we need the crystallizer 2 or above to do all of those. And we only have crystallizer 1. And where is this relevant? Well, there's a lot of broken recipes in our base now. And how do you find a broken recipe? Well, you could run around the factory looking for machines that don't have an icon on them. So they would look like that if you had Alt pressed if there wasn't any recipe, and there is on all of these. But factory's getting kind of big. So if you zoom out and have the icons on, right here, this is a much faster way of going through the factory. It's still kind of annoying because you still have to scan the factory here, but what you're looking for are little sections of machines that are blue here, but they don't have an icon, which tells you there's no recipe. And certainly, there should be a recipe there. And the only reason it would be removed is because the update changed which machines were allowed to make which recipes. So if they're no longer allowed to make a certain recipe, it just disables it, and it looks broken. So that's kind of what we're looking for here when we're going down all these machines. Another thing that got changed are the air filters. Specifically, they now take less modules than they did before. So certainly any machine that's using air filters with modules in them is going to be wrong now. But we'll deal with that later because the recipe still looks okay. But I was talking about the crystallizers. Well, here's a big example of it. You see we have a big blue square of machines with no recipe. And of course we go in, the recipe is gone, and we have no crystals. And this is because the minimum tier of machines to make crystals changed. Looks like we have a lot of recipe changes that now appear in our menu. But anyway, if we go to gemstones here, to make splinters only requires the tier 1, but to make the shards, it now requires the tier 2. So now that we know there's a certain type of machine that is broken, we can check other machines like that. And one that comes to mind are the gemstone makers. You can see all of their recipes are gone as well because the minimum tier required changed. And I believe it just changed to tier 2, and it did. And that's kind of what you're going to see here, is that a lot of these recipes got broken, but the factory as a whole isn't terribly broken. It's just some of the tiers of machines are now too low, and they need to be updated with things we can already make. We just haven't. And here's another example, a big one, where it's not the tier of machine that changed, but it's the type of machine. So sulfuric acid is still okay, but the sulfur dioxide gas changed. And instead of being made in a chemical plant, it's now made in a liquefier. So that's going to require a little more work. We're basically going to have to rebuild that with different machines. It's kind of annoying, but it is what it is. And that's basically what you do. You go around looking for machines. Here's another one. And here's another one. There's lots of them. Looking for groups of machines that no longer have recipes. And then we'll have to go from there. So as far as research, certainly some of this stuff would be useful, like the heat exchanger 2s, but power isn't a problem anymore, and I don't really want to get distracted doing a bunch of stuff when we can just be working on the tier 3 ore. So I kind of don't want to bother with that. Something that is worth doing is the nitrogen processing 3, because it gives us air filter 3, which is a new type of air filter, I believe. That's kind of why I think the modules and the speeds of the air filters were changed, because there is now a tier 3, so to make them balanced, they were modified. So that might help us fix the air filters if we had a new tier of machine, so we get our module slots back. And I might have been talking about hydrazine before, but it's not something we can really easily make right now because it requires the blue metal catalyst, and that requires cobalt and titanium, so we can't really do any of this stuff, but we're doing it for the air filter. So we will grab it. And, you know, some other stuff is starting to unlock, but we don't really need to do any of that now. Blue algae processing would be awfully nice. We'd basically stop making ammonia locally at every location and instead just put it on a pipe and have a central area of blue algae making it. And it's pretty good because you're using sulfuric wastewater, which we are in large part just getting rid of without doing anything with. So that's a pretty good use of the sulfuric wastewater, which your factory always has a ton of. But for the same reason of not wanting to get too distracted, we'll just think of that later. And the next time we have the need of ammonia, well, then we'll worry about making a blue algae setup. Well, we definitely need our crystallizer 2s. They just require components we already have. So we might as well. And it does unlock the ability to take mineral sludge and turn them into all of the other ores, including the rare ones. Probably the big one here would be cobalt and tungsten. And we do need cobalt for doing the higher tier of belts, which would be especially useful now that we are considering our tier 3 ore sorting. But it's not going to make it very fast, and we're still going to have to process that cobalt before we can use it. And I don't know if I want to go through all that effort, because then when we have tier 3 ore sorting, we're probably just going to be changing everything again. So I don't like the idea, as convenient as blue belts would be, to be processing cobalt and then just immediately change it in a few episodes. So I kind of think I'm just going to skip this for now. But we definitely want to upgrade that setup once we've got all of those ore processing lines in place. And it also gives us the ability to use ceramic filters. And the main advantage of the ceramic filters over the carbon ones is that you don't have to use any coal. All you have to do is clean them with water and you get it back. So it saves you on all of that coal. So that's one less item that you have to ship around. So ceramic filters are definitely good and just requires alumina. So that's something we can get into eventually. But for now, we just want the crystallizer 2. And it's unlocked some other stuff, but I don't think we really need to worry about any of that right now. Then radar 3, which is interesting because I thought we already had radar 3s. It's very possible that we do. Well, it's in my inventory as radar 3s, so certainly we're already making it. And let's see if we can find where they would have been on here. And is there just a missing recipe where they would be? No. The recipe stayed, so I guess even if you don't have it researched, if the recipe is already in place, it stays. So we will just grab that to make things back to normal. And solar panel 3s for vehicles is gold, so we can't do that. There's the science, which we're waiting on our new materials for. And yes, we definitely want the powder mixer 2s again. Pretty sure it's already being made in here. I believe that's it right there. Another thing to consider with all of these machines is a lot of the input resources for these various tiers of machines have changed somewhat. But I don't really feel like checking every single one of these to make sure that the requests match what the machine needs. So instead, what I think I'm going to do is just leave it. And if we come to a point where, like, you know, we're doing salinization plants and we're like, why don't we have any? Why are the bots taking forever? And then we come back here and we're like, oh, they're not here. There must be a resource that's missing. And then we'll quickly figure it out. And I think I'd rather do it that way than... That's a lot of machines going through each and every one of these, making sure the requests are all correct. I'd rather not do that. So that's kind of how I'm going to handle that. So if we get that researched, it finishes the chain here. See, we needed that for the green circuits here. So we definitely would have had that researched already. And another thing is like the burner heat source 2s, which we can now do. But for the same reason as the other power generation, I don't really want to be rebuilding everything right now, just for that. So I think that takes care of the missing research. Now we need to go down here and make sure we're making what we need. I believe it was the new tier of air filters and also those sludge processors. So they're probably not lined up anymore, but where in the world are those air filters? Down here, oh look at that, it actually will be lined up. So hopefully all of those inputs are correct, because I don't want to check them again. But we need another one. And actually, while we're here, we can start putting in our efficiency 5s. I probably will go over the factory and update everything, like, eventually with the better modules, but the factory is getting pretty big. I'd rather not bother right now. So we'll do the air filter 3 in there. Set to 50. That sounds pretty good. Change this to the blue one. And let's just copy the request over here so we can get rid of that. And then hopefully they should be delivering everything we need. Of course, they could be coming from very far away. And they are. But it could just be there wasn't any local bots around here. And it looks like that's probably the case. Because here they come. Well, it's going. And then the other thing was the next tier of these, which we can copy this, like right there. And this one. And get all these recipes right. We want the blue ones. And let's throw model 5s in there. And because we can't direct insert them, we'll just have to use the bots for this. And I'm curious on how many it would request. Looks like 12 per box, which is probably fine. So we can just leave that in here and just copy them directly over. See, that one's making it. And I guess I'll just grab a stack of air filters here, or maybe a couple of them. Like 30 of them, because I have the feeling we're going to have quite a few fixes we're going to need to do. I'm not sure if we're actually going to need any of these. But I'll just grab 10 for now. I think the big machines we're going to need are a bunch of these crystallizers here. I kind of don't want to wait on bots to do all this. It sounds kind of annoying considering they don't have any recipes in them right now. Well, we can kind of try to create a mental list of things we want to check. Like, we definitely want to check the air filters there. Otherwise, a lot of this looks pretty good. Seems like it should be not using these leaves for nutrient pulp when we have a train here, so why is that not working? It seems like there's no limit, it just goes in and gets pumped out. But that means that that's actually giving priority to these machines instead, which doesn't seem right. So let's grab these. I think we've got enough to work with here, because we actually have a huge amount of dust, which really shouldn't be the case. I noticed that most of this warehouse has dust in it now, which is unusual. In fact, the leaves are about to be gone, but I think that's because we're just not making any crystals. But this pump is running if this goes low. So I'm thinking we probably also want to have pumps attached to these as well. I mean, I guess the reason why it's kind of set up that way is so there is more nutrient pulp left over for this process. But as you see, we're actually fine on nutrient pulp anyway. So we probably don't need to worry about saving it for that. This is the better use of it, I believe. Okay, well, let's see. These are set to under 10,000. Let's do under 20 for these. So we'll connect this through and just change this to 20. And we actually don't have plastic anymore, so let's just use these. And there we go. It should now give priority to our trains. It's probably not running very much though because of the lack of crystal consumption, but let's see, what do we got going on here? Looks like we still haven't quite maxed out on these seeds. It's been a long time. But it kind of looks like it's getting close though. So that's pretty good. The recipes all seem attached here. And yeah, we got a big space there of recipes we need to fill in. So let's do that now. So we got a lot of tier 1s that now get their tier 2s. Which of course now they're going to be faster. So the number of machines might change. And we quickly run out of machines, but let's see, we don't want to do any of those. We're here for the raw crystal shards with the crystal enhancers. Of course, all the pipes are misaligned. Of course they are. But moving inserters is always good to see. That means we're probably pretty close. And there we go. We now get our one module slot, so now we have to figure out what did we calculate for here. It might be hard to tell if the number of machines have kind of changed, but I kind of think that 8.6 was a pretty good number. So let's come in here. And of course it's set to crystallizer 1, but now we need to set it to crystallizer 2. And let's see, the number of machines is 34 for this, and what do we have? We have 32. So I believe that means we do need the speed module because, well, the productivities aren't even an option. Now with the speed module 5s, we have too many, but whatever. It's how the factory works, and this is kind of why I don't go through old setups and upgrade them. Because all the numbers end up being wrong, and you'll be perpetually fixing things. But nonetheless, there is a small benefit to power consumption by using better speed modules, so we'll just use these instead of the 2s, which we could put in there if we really wanted to. But it looks like production is starting again. And these inserters will only turn on if we have too many crystals. And we went down to basically 0 in here, so that's kind of what we would expect. Looks like we're using the blue crystals the least right now. But that's going, and now hopefully that we're starting to pet some fish again. That we are going through the nutrient pulp and potentially going through this dust. I think we set it up this way because this was dust negative. There we go. So it's probably going to take a while. And that's actually a lot of dust because I'm pretty sure this is completely filled too. So that is a huge amount of dust, not to mention the train delivering dust too. But I think that's pretty good. That will get itself caught up eventually. So what part of this factory are we going to look at next looking for problems? Let's see. Well, the main bus should actually be fine. I don't think any of these machines were changed. It was mainly just the Angels machines. So the main bus is probably pretty good, but I do remember we needed to handle those air filters because now the numbers are just straight up wrong, and they're wrong in the negative sense. If it was wrong in the positive sense where we had too much production, I'd be like, whatever, it's fine. But if it's too few, well, that's not good. So the speed of the machine went down, and I think we lost a module slot as well. So that's bad. But these recipes should still be the same. This is probably too much by having 2 of these, but we need 405, and this is giving us half that. So what would 2 of them with speed module 5s do? Probably quite a lot. Yeah. So that's our 450, and we needed the 405. So that's fine, so then we just don't need this one anymore. And that's fixed, so we'll just have to remember every time we see an air filter, take a look at it, because it's almost certainly wrong. Because both the module slots were reduced and the speed was reduced, so that means that any setup that used it, whether it has modules or not, it's not going to be right anymore. Let's see, is everything loaded up? Yeah. It just didn't need the puffers, and of course the puffers turned on because we're making modules again. And fert. But they're going to start making their way in here again. So, how about some other stuff? Did we clear out all of this? It looks like it, that it's kind of balanced at 10,000 each. Which is kind of what we were looking for. What about the intermediates bus? We're only making batteries and ammo. So there's not much to break there. It's pretty quiet here. Seems fine. What's all the flashing here? Oh, is it just shooting? Oh, yes. How did the biters manage to put a nest right here to where the turret can hit like right here, but not right there? So I guess every time it makes a biter, it gets shot, and boom, we get a warning. But let's see here. What about the science bus? I don't think any of this would change, because this is the science cost tweaker, which is, as I discussed, doesn't really get updated, so I don't think any of this would actually change. No, but it does have air filters, which means something is probably wrong. And 2.5K of rubber, which seems pretty healthy. So yeah, let's go down there and take a look at those air filters. They do actually, well maybe not, because I noticed they had efficiency modules, which means that they're probably much faster than they need to be. So let's check this. We need 157, and well, we're not getting it. So we gotta go down there. And this is also probably a good opportunity to grab more crystallizers. We should probably have 50 now, and we're probably gonna need them. So we'll grab them. Oh wow, that's way more. Oh, that's set to 200. Well, I guess that makes sense, but we've been kind of going with 50 before. Well, actually 200 actually makes a lot of sense for this type of machine, because they get used in large quantities, which means that these are probably also set to 200, but they don't need to be. They could be at 50, and I've already noticed empty chests, which means the input resources are incorrect. It's not getting steel or steel pipes, and it looks like it was for bronze. So yeah, all of that needs to be changed. So the dirty way is just to put it over there and then pick everything up, if it even fits, which it kind of doesn't, actually. So mistakes were already made here. No, it's too late. It's also really hard to tell because the bronze pipes and steel pipes look very similar to each other. But I think it does it for that one. And this one's probably the same thing, where we need to get rid of these bronze pipes. And also the bronze plates as well. And I think that does it. And that kind of shows why I don't want to do this any more than I have to. Because it's super messy. So we needed 157, which sounds like it'll be doable with just one of these now. So with a single speed module. Well, almost. It's technically too much, but do we need the full output of this? Oh, actually, here we go. I was like, what's the recipe on here? Well, there isn't one. It's only a single machine. So it's hard to see on the map there, but that is a blue square. And it looks like this was probably making sulfur dioxide, I'm guessing. So, probably should grab some liquefiers and just take those with us. Because having bots do all those changes is annoying and slow because the recipe won't get copied over because there is no recipe. So we're basically just going to have to stand there and wait for them to get there. Or come back later, which both sound annoying. So, where are the liquefiers? I'm assuming we're making them. Yeah. Right here, we've got a few. Well, the inventory is getting kind of full, which is kind of bad. Because these machines are just large. They only stack in groups of 10. But that should give us at least a few slots here. I've noticed our ore is very low for silicon. Only at 200. It seems to be holding, kind of, but that's basically zero. So what's going on there? I see. It's holding at 200 because the rest of it is being used for bricks. And it's not running because we're basically out of the catalyst. And you guessed it, it's because the tier of the crystallizers changed for the crystal catalysts. So now we need to upgrade those. So we are not making any catalysts at all right now. At least those kind. The tier 1 is just fine for the mineral catalysts. So that's yet another thing that got broken. And that's going to be basically the description of this episode is running around and fixing things. So, let's see. And our bots are trying to help and making things worse. Please stop. We need this and the sulfur dioxide gas. Well, hopefully this number is correct. So 64. And that makes 90. So we do not need to power this in its entirety, which means that one module is probably okay. So since this is plenty fast as is, we can just use efficiency modules. But since the minimum power requirements for a building is 20%, can't go to 0, that's kind of why I wanted to do those pollution modules, because we have an extra slot and we have nothing to put there. But because we have pollution cleaning for our very low output machines, now we can make them incredibly efficient with energy and produce almost no pollution at all. I don't remember if when we were working on these before, I thought it was negative 50% pollution, not negative 75. That seems really good. I thought they were all 50%. So the 8 is minus 120, but I guess it makes sense. Not for a standard machine, but because the other modules add pollution, then having negative 120% is actually useful. So that makes sense. I just don't remember if that's how it was before. Doesn't seem like it was. But, That's pretty good use of that machine. Which means now we don't need this, and our poor inventory. So that seems pretty good. And we have the speed module, which adds the energy consumption, so we will add the efficiency to reduce it again. Which, when you add those two together, they kind of cancel out. So the machine is just faster with no disadvantage. And we'll go with that. Although, now that I'm looking at it, it looks like the potential limiting factor was actually this nitrogen. Because it's got a tank for oxygen, so that makes it a little more difficult to calculate. But we can. So we need 40. And it looks like they're over here. 27. So we need 67. And what does this give us? It still gives us what we need. And there are a couple places that we can throw productivities in. Certainly making these last longer would be nice. And it's kind of annoying though. But so we have to put the exact tier of pump jack in here. Which one are these? Number 3. So number 3s with productivity 5s. So hopefully that works. Well, doesn't seem to though. That's kind of annoying. And that's kind of another reason I don't like running through the factory doing all this. Because it's kind of hard to see between the difference of these modules, because those lights are kind of small. Just a lot of squinting, which I'd rather not deal with. But these do help, being the module 5s. I probably should upgrade all the mines to be 5s, but I'll worry about that some other time. Okay. So that's fixed up. What about the electronics bus? I don't think anything here would be different. It's a lot to check. Certainly a lot of this stuff could get the tier 5 modules, for sure. But that's a job for another day. Right now, we just want to make sure that nothing is straight up broken. And I don't think any of it is. Well, this is something that can be removed by removing the Mad Clowns. Of course, we got rid of oil sands, which means none of this has a use anymore. And it's been sitting dormant for a great many episodes, so it doesn't really matter. But let's see what we can do here. Basically grab all of that. And all of that. And it looks like that cut power off to down here. But we can fix that. So I want to come in here, basically grab everything but the bot stuff. Just follow where the bots are coming from and they will lead us to where we need to go. I see power production is in full force. But here we are. We just kind of need to hook this back up because I see the bots are getting a little confused there, which is kind of what I was figuring would happen. So we just kind of want to get all this stuff hooked up again. There we go. Happy bots make for a happy factory. And they don't reach out this far, so... Oh no, I was like, we'll help, but this is bad. It's gonna fill up the inventory. Oh well. Looks like we're almost out of power as well. So let's put another spot down. Get charged up. Did any part of our power armor change? I don't think so. I have been enjoying this battery-powered armor. It is a little annoying that every once in a while you have to charge it up, but it holds pretty well. That's a lot of batteries. And I guess bots will come by eventually and fix our inventory here. We still have a great deal of all these residuals to go through. We are slowly making our way through it, but I think at some point in the future we will find a pretty good use for them. We're just kind of waiting for that day to come. But that's looking pretty good here. Anything else out here Kind of. The trees. One interesting thing is our tree setup seems to be maxed out. Which I don't know if that's always been the case, but it certainly is now. And I think we could put the better saw blades in there to get a higher yield, but that would actually only be a higher yield out of the regular blades. In other words, we would save on iron. It wouldn't make more trees. We would have to upgrade this setup to do that. But it appears like it's, well, running mostly at full, but it's not making very much soil, which might be the limiting factor. All of this is going. So it could just be we are short on mud. We don't have a critical shortage because all of this stuff right here is being turned into the pellets, and then the pellets are being shipped up here to be turned into either carbon or carbon dioxide or bricks. And I guess the bricks are being used for fuel, I assume. Yes, that's probably not the best use of the bricks. Of course, we have coal, which we can make all of this stuff with, but wood is free. And we have other sources of power that aren't bricks that are more efficient. Because I think the bricks turn on before these fuel blocks turn on, and because of the oil residuals, we can turn those oil residuals into fuel blocks through this process up here, and our fuel oil, which we have plenty of. So I feel like the best use of wood right now is to make our carbon products, not to make fuel. So let's change that. Otherwise, the tree setup is working fine. It's just, it has a priority set to it, so we certainly have no problem with the things we need it for, like circuits and whatnot, and paper. The main thing that's sucking it up is burning for fuel, but of course, whenever you're burning something for fuel, it will all disappear into fuel because that's how power works. So we want to try to fill up on our carbon sources first here. So they already have a logic hooked up here where it looks like our input logic is putting priority to the tree products that are coming from the algae growing, which is fine because that is a low value byproduct, and then a higher value byproduct, or I guess it's not even a byproduct, it's just high value extras, are from trees, which are coming in here. So that's fine, but the uses need to change, where it has to be above 1,000 for this and 2,000 for that. Well, that creates a priority. And so we don't have to change these numbers, let's just have this set up kind of the same way, but then if this is 1,000, this is 2,000, let's make this 3,000. So yes, this will orphan 1,000 pellets in here, where they can't be used for anything. It has to be above that point, but that way I don't have to change those numbers. So this will take a little while, but eventually it will get enough deliveries to fill up. Don't want to check everything right now, or at least I don't want to get too distracted, so I kind of want to use the road to section these off into smaller chunks to look for missing recipes. We do have air filters here that we should check. Otherwise, I think those are pretty good. And that's the end of this episode. On the next one, we are going to finish up with all the factory fixes. Thanks for watching. I'll see you later.